Welcome viewers, this is Media Track episode 22, in which we look at the news in the past week. I am Frederick Noronha and with me is Devika Sequeira as usual to start with the lead.
Thank you, Frederick. I have to, of course, start with the Citizenship Amendment Bill, which was passed in the Rajya Sabha just on Wednesday, late night. In fact, the debate went on for many hours, and it will now become law once the president approves it. So it was passed by a vote of 125 to 99. In fact, there was this debate over whether it would actually pass in the Rajya Sabha, whether BJP didn't have a majority, but the things played out in such a way, and the centre was confident it would manage the numbers, and it did, in fact. So what is the Citizens Amendment Bill and the Citizenship Amendment Bill? It is a bill that seeks to give citizenship to Hindu, Parsi, Sikh, Jain, Buddhist and Christian refugees from Afghanistan, Bangladesh and Pakistan who came to India by December 31, 2014, and it was passed in the Lok Sabha on Monday and Monday midnight, and in the Rajya Sabha on Wednesday. And there have been concerns. So one would ask, why are some parts of the northeast, in fact only Assam and Tripura, there have been huge agitations and protest of this, what is being called CAB, and why is there so much agitation in these two states? And one is because, Assam has a porous boundary with Bangladesh, and it has been struggling against the influx of Bangladeshi migrants for years. So, but the actual, startling point of this CAB is that it gives all these minority refugees, that is Hindu, Parsi, Sikh, Jain, Buddhist and Christians, citizenship rights, those who've come here by December 31, 2014. But it has deliberately, obviously excluded the Muslims. So it is being seen as, a very dark hour in India's history. And this was brought out best, I would say, by, the Telegraph India, which comes out from Calcutta. And as you know, Telegraph has this...
It's known for its headlines.
It is known for its headlines, and this one was really very edgy. It says, "Our tryst with the dark ages." It will be shown to you when... but the interesting part is also, how the newspapers viewed it. And there was this whole in Deccan Herald, there was this headline which said, which quoted PC Chidambaram, it's a slap on Parliament's face that this bill actually came through. And Chidambaram said that this government is ramming through the bill to achieve its Hindutva agenda.
So for the first time, Devika, religion becomes a basis of nationality, which
Exactly.
is quite odd for a secular state in that sense.
Exactly. So,
and while the government says it doesn't amount to that, in fact, it actually just, that's what exactly happens.
yeah. And if you protest against, what the government is trying to do, the BJP has been just saying that the opposition speaking in the language of Pakistan. You know how it is. It's a favorite sort of thing. But two or three, analysts have put it very nicely. So you have the French writer who writes quite commonly for Indian newspapers. He said, citizenship law proposed nationwide NRC will revive conception of group rights in India. So, people are being seen by their religion rather than citizens, actual citizens.
Yeah. So actually in the Herald there was a interesting feedback taken from readers and intellectuals in Goa, and whoever they spoke to, the people whom they chose to speak to were quite critical of the law, the new law. So Prabhakar Timble says that CAB brings in religion as the dominant criteria for citizenship and relegates Muslims to the position of unwanted citizens.
Yeah.
And the others who spoke out against it were also Dr. Maria Aurora Couto, Dr. Victor Ferrão, Hema Naik, the prominent Konkani author, and Damodar Mauzo, also the Konkani literature.
Yeah.
So I think people, for the first time, in so many years of India's nationhood, we have a totally different conception, which is hard to come to terms with.
Absolutely, because everyone is saying now we've been saying, Pakistan is not a secular country, it is a Muslim country, but we are headed in the way of Pakistan eventually from the way things are playing out.
Somewhere along the discussion, one of the points that came up was also that Christian minorities face discrimination in Pakistan.
True.
I hope, while that is a fact, I hope that the government also looks at the case of Goa, where people from Goa who went to Pakistan for purely economic reasons, not at all political reasons, till today have difficulties in getting visas to come back to Goa.
Yes.
To come back to India, to visit India, just because they were born in Pakistan, even if they may have nothing to do with Pakistan as of now. So they are settled in Canada for 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
They won't get a visa so easily. So that's part of the
know.
problem.
That's true. What would you like to?
So in that sense, there's been so much happening on the political front that it's a bit difficult to go away from it. But nonetheless, there were tributes also paid to two persons who had passed away. One is Parikar, whose birth anniversary on the 13th, and on the other hand also Dr. Adelia DeCosta, the famous doctor and psychiatrist from Goa, who passed away on Thursday, that is. And her death was noted with some tributes. The report that came up in the Goan tells us a lot of things which we didn't know, some of us may have not known of, or many of us may have not known of. So she was the neuropsychiatrist who played a pioneering role in the field of mental health. Dr. Maria Adelia Perez y Costa, though of course everyone knew her as Dr. Adelia Costa, and she passed away at Miramar. She was the founder director of the Portuguese established Abe Faria Mental Hospital at Altino, which later became the IPHB, Institute for Psychiatry and Human Behavior, and is now situated at Bamboli. And she quit after 1961, and 62 she went to Portugal for a while and came back and practiced. She was a very prominent doctor, and
she was, and one of the first few psychiatrists, and the good thing was, she was a lady, so she shattered a lot of the glass ceiling, etc. Being so, and I recall her, she was quite outspoken and quite forthcoming in her views.
As a lady in colonial Goa, was she an exception, or was she part of a certain kind of trend which saw also some of the maybe more affluent ladies getting access?
I'm not quite sure, Frederick, but I would think in this field of psychiatry she was probably the first.
True.
And I don't recall there being any other psychiatrist, forget about a lady, even a male psychiatrist
to achieve that level,
as well known as her as
in
Goa at that time.
True.
Now the field of course has opened up, and you get a lot of so the next story also is a national story, and it talks about the Nanavati panel giving Modi a clean sheet in the post-Godhra riots. The reason I bring your attention to this story is the way the media has covered it, and with some papers, like the Times of India, giving it a complete full-page coverage, while other national papers like Deccan Herald and Telegraph, and then you had even Hindustan Times, just a mention of it in 2 columns. So, but when was the Nanavati panel actually set up? Years ago, and it in fact gave its report in 2014, and it has taken the government 5 years to table it in Parliament, and it's the Nanavati Commission said that the accounts of the 3 whistleblower cops was rejected, and they were not they were sort of biased, and then there were they were false, disgruntled, unreliable witnesses, according to the Nanavati. So, and the thing also had there was also a report which said that Modi denied that Ishan Jaffrey, the Congress MP who was, set ablaze in that horrible bakery, that he had actually called him asking for help. So this, gives the Prime Minister sort of a clean chit in post-Godhra riot cases.
Sometimes you feel that the newspapers also play the politics of convenience depending on what they choose to highlight and
Exactly.
the political biases.
Exactly.
Anyway, since we've had a surfeit of bad news this week, I'm looking hard to find something,
Positive.
positive, struggling hard to find.
Okay.
And I found something in this journal called Civil Society, which is a magazine brought out from Delhi, but looks
Yeah.
at the kind of positive side of society. And there is this small profile. They have an anniversary issue which looks at some of the prominent people who are actually working towards positive things in India.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the persons profiled is Evita Fernandez, who is running a series of hospitals in Hyderabad. So she started from a modest 2-bed nursing home in Hyderabad itself, and then she expanded into a 225-bed hospital, and today the hospital is at 5 locations in the city of
I see.
Hyderabad.
Okay.
I don't know whether she's Goan, Mangalorean, but or East Indian, but with a name
Okay.
like this, I'm guessing that she's
Yeah.
some way connected. But
Yeah.
it's an interesting story, I thought.
Okay. Well, I'll go back to a local story, and it circles around the NAFTA vessel, Nushi Nalini, which has been finally moved to the Mormugao Port Trust. And the Goan report says nearly 50 days after running aground. But the vessel which has now gone, it's going to be kept in the outer harbour and apparently in at some safe distance, so the naphtha can be extracted, also the oil, etc. But there's a little new story developing around it with the BJP minister Milind Naik, who is the local MLA of Vasco, saying that he will resist moves to store naphtha at Sada. Now, I find this a little, this is a little twist in the tail, so to speak, because Milind Naik was the very same person who was being linked to the naphtha vessel having been brought to Goa in the first place. So that's
for the people of Donapal, including you, it's quite some
yes,
relief.
I know,
that
it is a relief. In fact, the work was going on, and when we could see it from our balconies, these first they brought this little floating dock, and they attached it to the ship some maybe a week ago, or maybe a little more than a week ago, and they began working on it. And in the last 2-3 days, there have been 2-3 tugboats trying to get the vessel to move. In fact, a day earlier, before it was shifted, I saw the vessel being moved to one side, and then it swung back.
I see.
And eventually on Wednesday night, they managed to
quite a tough job, no? In that sense, it's
yes, they managed to float it. They apparently took off some of the load from the vessel, and only then they managed to float it at high tide. And that's how they moved it.
Another development coming in from out of the state is that the BJP actually swept the bipoles in Karnataka, the persons who had defected.
Yes. True.
Won their seats, most of them.
Yeah.
So then that has some implications for Goa, which is the neighboring state. And
yes, but there was also this analysis which said that Yadurappa, the Chief Minister of Karnataka, has sort of put his stamp on the state and his leadership, and that to some extent is a kind of warning signal to Shah and Modi that he is a local satrap, and they should be taking him seriously.
Some regions have these local leaders who stand up to the center and kind of, I mean, even in the Congress times, there was Andhra and, a few other states which felt that they could not be rode roughshod over.
Yeah.
But of course, that puts Goa in a bit of a spot, because you have the same government ruling both places, and the Madai issue is,
exactly.
Probably the BJP here gets more embarrassed if their party there gets strengthened and plays the hard card,
That's true. Well, Frederick, there was this little thing created around Parrikar because as you mentioned, it's his birth anniversary on 13 December, and there is this conference going on, a science-based conference happening in Donapaula or Bambuli. But apart from that, Michael Lobo has sort of set the ball rolling by claiming that there's a vacuum created by the vacuum created by Parrikar is still felt in Goa. Now this is obviously some kind of dig at the current chief minister, and he tried to make that a little sort of less sort of harsh sounding, and he said that this is not to say that Pramod Sawant is not working hard. He works 14 to 15 hours a day to see whatever dreams Parrikar had for Goa and Goans can be fulfilled. Michael Lobo also talked about tourism is not that promising these days. It's become a Friday, Saturday, Sunday tourism. It's only a weekend tourism, and he said that things are not so hunky-dory. And his statement comes at a time when UK, US travel advisories are telling people not to setting out some kind of warnings against visiting in India after the rape cases. So the TTAG, that's the Travel and Tourism Association of Goa, has said that worried about it, and they've said that this might affect. They hope this will affect only solo travelers, but otherwise they hope things will come back to normal.
So that can be seen as a kind of tongue-in-cheek compliment from Michael Lobo to the Chief Minister. I mean, not exactly a compliment.
Yeah.
But when we were talking some time back, when the ruling party gets so big, then the opposition comes out from within the party itself, like
that's
how
true.
We saw in the Congress in the 80s in Goa. The party was so big that the dissidents and people trying to topple the Chief Minister were from inside on the
exactly.
how it plays out.
Yeah.
Incidentally, if you just joined in, you are listening to Media Track, where we look at news and the way it was reported in Goa in the past week. Of course, we are supposed to stick to the past week, but sometimes it so happens, Devika, that you come across this report which you missed from a long time back, and you say, oh gosh, this was interesting, I should have been reading it earlier. And of course, we can't read everything all the time, but I just came across this quite dated report from Goan Review, which is a magazine brought out by late Father Freddy's brother, and the Gulab group and things like that. It's mostly in English. It has a bit in Romi Konkani, so it's a mix of English and Konkani. And sometimes they focus a lot on, the cultural scene, particularly in Konkani, Romi Konkani, Catholic Goa, that kind of thing. So they had this profile of Maestro Ludin Barreto, who was born in 38 and died just at the age of 60 in 98.
Yeah.
And everyone talks about him, mentions his name, but the amount of details that they had here, I found it quite interesting and useful. He lived in the Saligaon Seminary, and he was quite a prominent musician there. Someone called him one of the best musicologists east of the Suez in that sense at one stage. And he has also achieved a lot, but sometimes I feel we don't pay tribute to these people. For example, some of his unforgettable stage performances, the review goes on to say, were Mikado, Wizard of Oz, Oliver Twist, Fiddler on the Roof, Sound of Music, My Fair Lady, or Fierce in the Underworld. Some of these, although they happened in the 70s, probably early 80s, they still ring a bell.
I see.
I have faint memories of them. So there he tried to implement music in the schools in Goa as part of the curriculum, and he did quite a lot. He was a very soft-spoken man of very few words. So probably, people didn't notice, didn't give him his due in that sense.
Yeah, but he used to head the Western classical music section in Kala Academy, and I remember him well when he used to teach music, because I was there as a student in those early days when we were in school. Everyone, had to go to some music class or the other, and I was
in the 70s.
I would think, yes, probably in the 70s, and I remember he once came into the, place where I was practicing the piano, and he said, no, this is wrong, and etc., and he corrected me, and then we had a chat, and he went away. So I do have memories of him
You know,
as a music
yeah,
teacher.
we used to learn with him also, and I didn't have a ear for music at all. And we were always the other boys and girls would keep me at closer to his side, because like if anyone got a wrong note, he was quick to correct them. Sometimes maybe with a candlestick or whatever.
Okay.
But what you're saying is true, because in February '77, Maestro Antonio Fortunato de Figueiredo handed over the directorship of the Western Music Wing of
Yeah.
Goa Kala Academy and the conductorship of the Goa State Symphony Orchestra to Father Ludin Barreto.
Yes, yes.
So that was a transition when you know, the old the private institute. Now what was it called? Institute.
Institute.
The Portuguese one
Okay.
in Fontanes. It was privately run, and then it became into the Kala Academy.
That's right.
The government took it
Yes,
over.
yes, that's right. Well, Frederick, there is this very amusing story, I must say, where, you know, a whole delegation of the corporation of the city of Panjim has gone missing, and the other councillors who went to the office sometime this week found that everybody was missing. The mayor, Uday Madkaikar, was missing, and the commissioner, Sanjit Rodrigues, were missing. And they apparently have gone on a tour to Croatia unannounced. And this angered a lot of
Croatia,
the councillors.
for what?
To Croatia. It isn't said at all here. When the Herald reporter tried to contact, none of the delegation members were available. However, as a social media post by the mayor, the visit seems to be in regards to Smart City and the Amrut mission. So in one of the photos posted by the mayor, the scope of the visit is said to be to strengthen EU-India cooperation among select cities. Now, isn't that amusing?
It can almost be quite a scam in that sense. And I think, you know, while transparency has been a goal, at least in some of the past years, and the citizen has a right to apply under RTI and all, in actual practice, no one has a clue of what's going on, where the money gets spent, you know, where the budgets are going, what is the state of the debt, you know, whether it's state level or civic level. Why, you know, and it's all connected with why governance fails at some point, no?
Yeah, I mean, everybody is out on some jaunt or whatever. I mean, they never think of, you know, of sparing the exchequer this kind of expense. It just doesn't seem to.
And I'm sure it doesn't come cheap now in that sense.
Absolutely. I mean, going to flying all the way to Croatia in a huge delegation is quite this. Well, there was this very interesting story I read again in the Herald, but this one was in the Herald Cafe, and it talked about this US-based researcher. She's Amu Matthew. She's doing a project on where she's looking at Indian soldiers from the Italian campaign of World War II. So she's spending the next 6 months in India to collect information, videos, photographs, and she was also in Goa recently, and she's sort of made an appeal for people who had you know, some relatives who served in the Indian Army or served in whatever army to come forward to you know, enhance her data. So far the video, she has got quite a lot of created a video with historical film footage, and she's still collecting a lot. She wants interviewing people who had some member of the family in
that
in
story
the army.
caught my eye also as well.
True.
Some Goans have worked in World War I also, have served in World War I, isn't it? Because you know, Brigadier Ian de Costa was mentioning his ancestors there. In our family, there's talk about someone dying in Mesopotamia, which is today Iraq, and things like that, you know. So those things have been happening. Recently, incidentally, this might be of interest. Our colleague and friend Melvin Mesquita, sorry.
Yeah.
Melvin Mesquita has revived plans to work on his book. He actually did a presentation.
Okay.
And his book is about this HMS Britannia.
Uh-huh.
Britannica, something like that. A British ship which had a lot of Goan crew.
I see.
And they were torpedoed somewhere off the Africa coast. And this crew managed to get onto a tiny lifeboat.
Okay.
And the Brits there, you know, advised them that instead of trying to go to Africa, they'll sail to Brazil, because it's not very far actually at that point.
Okay.
And the winds were favorable to Brazil. And 2 days before they could reach, his great grand uncle something like that, passed away
Oh, I see.
because they didn't have water to drink.
That was Melvin's great grand uncle.
And he has actually traced the story for many years. He's been sitting on it, and we've been telling him you should get it done, you should do it. So he's actually thinking of. He did a presentation in Aldona recently. So anyway,
let me bring forward another amusing story about the Gandhi market in Margao, which is going to close down for a day or a few hours on Thursday, on a very busy working day. And it's not, this report in the Goan says it's not going to be closed down for a morcha or a protest, but it's actually going to be closed down for the wedding ceremony of Babu Asgaonkar's son, who is going to be married at the stadium. So the wedding reception is scheduled at at Dr. Shyam Prasad Mukherjee Indoor Stadium in Bambuli, and the vegetable, fruit and ready-made garments vendors are going to down shutters. They say that they cannot miss the wedding. They've all been invited. So I thought it was quite.
There was a big report on the Goan and it caught my eye. Very interesting. Do you think, Devika, that we as Goans, I'm not saying it only because it's Babu Asgaonkar and because they are market vendors or whatever, everyone is in the same boat. Do we celebrate a bit too much in that sense?
I think we do celebrate birthdays quite a bit, and we waste a lot of money, especially politicians waste a lot of money putting ads, singing praises to themselves. And I learnt early on when I used to work in the newspaper that some of them don't even pay for those ads. They get some of their supporters to sponsor those ads, and they seem to think that the bigger the ads, the more popular they are. But they're all sort of directed at pushing their political careers further. So
but at the same time, I guess that this is a touchy point, because if someone is not invited, they would feel left out. And Babu Asgaonkar, of course, came up from the Margao municipal market.
Yes, he came up from starting strikes and as literally as a person who they call them a real grassroots leader.
So he started there, and then he became the deputy chief minister, and today his son is actually the Gandhi Market Vendors Association president, no?
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, he is the president.
He is the president. I know that. Well, there was another story that caught my eye, and it talks about the Goa University will have a Dalai Lama chair for Nalanda studies, and Nalanda, the Goa University has signed an MOU with the Foundation for Universal Responsibility of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. The Dalai Lama was in Goa on Thursday, I would think
Wednesday.
Wednesday was it? Yes. And there was a special session for him. I think the Goa University choir performed for him at Kala Academy, and the Dalai Lama gave a speech. And I did see a lot of Tibetans on the road in Panjim, and they obviously come to see their spiritual leader. Yeah. So it will be an interesting thing if this chair does take shape and for special studies. Nalanda is a unique method of teaching, learning, which includes healthy discourse between teacher and pupil. The process of cooperative and argumentative dialogue between the teacher and learner is said to have been based on asking and answering questions that stimulate critical thinking. I would think definitely Goa University needs that.
Yeah, because our models here are based on European traditional 13th, 14th, 15th century models.
Yes.
Which have kind of stood the test of time, but we don't know what we are missing out by just following one particular way of doing things.
That is true.
So if that's all,
that is all
we could wind up
this week
for today. And thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for watching.